Turns out the Civil War was a pretty tough time to be a soldier. The U.S. Army went from 16,000 men in 1860 to more than 600,000 men in 1862. A lot of the systems designed to support soldiers both in life and in death were not designed to handle that many men. They strained under the effort, and some of them broke. In the 1860s, there are no dog tags. Records are often spotty at best. There's no DNA. There's no dental records. If you are killed in combat, your best chance of being identified is if your friend comes after the battle and buries you himself. Sometimes that happened. Most of the time it didn't. So you get buried by a burial crew, usually by whoever won the battle. So half the time, you're not even getting buried by your own people. They have no idea who you are. With no standardized system to identify the dead, they don't even know what to look for if they did. If you're lucky, you get buried in a grave with a wooden board with your name scratched on it. If you're unlucky, you get buried in a pit or a trench, maybe a dozen other men. Either way, your grave's probably pretty shallow. Now, the Confederates have it a little bit easier. Because they're on home turf most of the time, they're closer to home just generally, so it's easier to send them home, even if they don't get sent home. When the armies move on, the local southern communities often went out and took care of the graves, cared for them, or relocated the dead to local cemeteries. That same courtesy was not extended to the U.S. war dead. Their graves were left where they were, left untended. What that means is that for many U.S. soldiers during the war, they will not get a proper burial sometimes until years after they have been killed. Men killed at Fredericksburg in 1862 are not formally properly buried until the creation of the National Cemetery in 1866, 4 years later. By that time, many of the graves that did have identifiers on them, those wooden headboards are gone. The communal graves have been worked over by weather and sometimes even by animals. Remains have become intermixed. When the Army Burial Corps goes through in 1866 and 1867 to bury the dead, a lot of times they have no way of knowing what bones belong to what bodies. We have 15,000 men buried here. We only have 7,000 graves. A lot of the time, when the Army dug you up, if they found multiple bodies there, if they came out of one hole, they went back into the same hole. We have graves here with as many as 12 men in them. So as you go through the rest of the cemetery tonight, as you talk to the other Rangers, as you learn the stories of the men we know, think about the stories we can never know from the men we don't. Civil War was the bloodiest war in our nation's history. Hundreds of thousands of men died. "12,000 of those men here not only sacrificed their lives, but they had their names and their identities taken away. They gave everything to free a race and to weld a nation back together. So as you learn the stories of the known, look at the graves as you go through. We've got all kinds. We've got big ones, we've got humble ones. Many of them, small little square stones set into the ground. Many of them will have 2 numbers on them. One number is the grave number. If it has a second number, it's the number of men believed to be in that grave.